What do you do when everything is washed away? Noah and the flood. Scripture is based on Genesis 6, verses 14 through 22, chapter 7, verses 17 through 23, and chapter 8, verses 20 through 22. The flood story in the Bible is a story of loss, of losing the world and everything in it. But you don't often think about the loss Noah felt when everything got washed away. Noah lost his neighbors, his home, his country. He also lost years building the ark, years of ridicule and being the wrong end of jokes. So when the flood washed everything away, Noah lost everything but his family too. He survived, but his world was washed away. Some of you have felt like Noah felt, have been through what Noah experienced. Some of you will have to live through losing everything. No one is a stranger to death, to loss, to mourning and grief and despair. But no one is a stranger to joy either. There were 3 things that God told Noah to do. The first one was to build an ark. The second one was to gather up. You're thinking to gather a certain number of each animal. But no, God sent the animals to Noah. He didn't have to gather them together. What he did have to gather up was enough food to support 8 people for a year. The third thing was to take his family and go inside the ark and bolt out the rest of the world while the floodwaters came and washed it all away. Build, gather, let go. God gave mankind 120 years to straighten up and turn back from their evil ways. People have debated how long it took Noah to build the ark. We know he started building it between his 500th and 600th birthdays. Some people posit that each command, build, gather, and get in the ark, were accomplished separately. So after the ark was built, they gathered all the food stuff. These people consider it took about 75 years to build the ark. Jasher 5:35 states that Noah made the ark in 5 years. Jasher is Hebrew for the book of the upright, or the upright or correct record. It covers the events from the creation of the world to the death of Moses. Rome wasn't built in a day. God created the earth in 6 days. It took the Israelites a full generation to cross the desert and enter the promised land. It doesn't matter how long it took Noah to build the ark. What matters is that he did build it. Listen to his instructions. Genesis 6:14 through 16. Make yourself an ark of gopher wood. Make rooms in the ark and cover it inside and out with pitch. This is how you are to make it. The length of the ark, 300 cubits. The breadth, 50 cubits. And its height, 30 cubits. Make a roof for the ark and finish it to a cubit above, and set the door of the ark in its side. Make it with lower, second, and third decks. My father often used the saying, measure twice, cut once. But he had a standardized measuring tape clipped to his belt. Noah didn't. Noah had to use the things that God created, his own body. A cubit is the length of the forearm from the elbow to the tip of the middle finger. Depending on the person, a cubit is about 18 inches. But mine isn't. My cubit is 15 inches. My ark would be considerably smaller than Noah's. 900 inches too short, 150 inches too narrow, 90 inches less in height. But God didn't ask me to build the ark. He told Noah to. And God knew exactly what dimensions the ark would have because he knew exactly how tall Noah was. God had created Noah. Psalm 139, verse 13 says, "For you formed my inward parts, you knitted me together in my womb." God knows exactly what you are made of. He knows the height of you, the breadth of you. He knows the strength and talents you possess. When he tells you to build something, he knows precisely the dimensions of the end result. It doesn't matter how long it took Noah to build the ark. It doesn't matter that his ark would be different if you had built it or if I had built it. What matters is that God wanted Noah to build it, and he did build it. He listened to God and did as he was led to do. We are told to build things. God tells us to build a Sunday school program, to build a church, to build a ministry to specific needs for our community. He tells us to build up knowledge and be ready to use it. I can only imagine that Noah was the subject of ridicule and anger from those around him. People don't like to hear that they will face total destruction if they don't change their ways. But Noah built it anyway. The next thing God told Noah to do was to gather enough food to last a long time for the 8 people he would save. How much food is needed for 8 adults over 1 year? I checked with 2 of the most popular survivalist blogs. The first one, Modern Survival Blog, bases their food stock amounts on the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, which, as you may know, is known for storing up enough food for a year. For a family of 8 adults, they recommend 3,200 pounds of grain, which means wheat, berries, rice, oats, and any other dry grains. 480 pounds of beans and legumes, 128 pounds of dairy products, 160 pounds of meat, 160 pounds of fats and oils, 480 pounds of sugars, 64 pounds of salt, 720 pounds of fruit and vegetables, and herbs and spices. Modern survivalism has become popular as pandemics and global wars never slumber. The second most popular blog, Easy Prepping, suggests 3,315 pounds of grains, which they reckon as wheat, rice, flour, oats, pasta, and cornmeal, 169 pounds of meat, 212 pounds of oils and fats, 592 pounds of dried legumes and seeds, 730 pounds of milk, 510 pounds of sugars, 42 pounds of salt, 32 pounds of salt, baking powder, baking soda, yeast, jams, and vinegars, 2,720 quarts of fresh fruits and vegetables, 765 pounds of dried fruits and vegetables, and 1,551 gallons of water. But Noah was a vegetarian. So how does this change the above? An article from the SF Gate newspaper stated, dairy products and eggs are good non-meat sources of protein. Beans, soy, lentils, and other legumes are excellent alternatives to meat protein. Other alternatives to meat protein also include nuts and seeds. Plus, the cows and goats on the ark should have been able to provide all the dairy they needed. And there was obviously enough water. I know when I could only go grocery shopping once every 2 weeks, that I gathered a larger amount of food in my shopping cart than others around me. I also remember the looks and comments they made to me. You feeding an army? Is there a hurricane coming? Stocking up for the winter? I could imagine Noah heard similar criticisms. It takes organization to gather up that much food stuff. It takes having a place to store it so it doesn't spoil in the wet or get eaten by bugs and vermin. It has to be packaged so it's easy to get to and won't be easily contaminated. Churches are faced with the same organizational obstacles. Why do we need that large a sanctuary when there's only a few people in the congregation? What do you mean we need to hire a youth minister? We've only got a handful of children. You want us to open a food pantry when we've got members who live on fixed budgets and can't feed themselves? Noah gathered the food stuff anyway, because God told him to. Noah knew that humans had only 120 years left to live. Each of us has at one time or another been given the same ultimate time frame. X number of years left to live. Humans born in America today are expected to live to 150. For those born 120 years ago, in 1900, the life expectancy was 47 years, almost 48 years for white people, 33 years for black people. When someone is faced with a diagnosis of cancer, the life expectancy is chunked into 5-year stretches and is measured by how many people survive those 5 years. In the United States today, 77% of people diagnosed with bladder cancer are still alive after the first 5 years. 88% with breast cancer survive the first 5 years. Stomach cancer is 29%. Lung cancer is 18%. Prostate is 97%. But that's in the United States. In other countries, the life expectancy is not so optimistic. Take Jordan, for example. Survival rates are significantly lower for the same cancers diagnosed in Jordan. 43% for breast cancer, 28% for stomach cancer, 4% for lung cancer, and only 27% for prostate cancer. When you know someone you love has that percentage of time left, it changes your life. Noah started building a boat. There are other things which shorten life expectancy. Drugs, accidents, COVID, heart disease, murder, despair. Building the boat didn't stop the flood. Life ends. Loved ones die. Sometimes you have a flood that washes everything away. Everything. Sometimes you have to let go of all that you lose until there's nothing left but your faith in God. Genesis 8:22. As long as the earth endures, seed time and harvest, cold and heat, summer and winter, day and night will never cease. After God decided to wash everything away, after Noah spent almost a century building something and gathering supplies for God, after being the leader of his family and waiting on the animals to come, after shutting the door against the world, Noah had to stand there and watch everything he knew wash away. God said that there will be good and bad, feast and famine, plenty and lack, brightness and darkness, as long as the earth endures. When everything was washed away, Noah endured. He endured because he listened to God. He built what God intended him to build. He gathered in what God told him he would need, and Noah endured. When seed time comes again, Someone who endures will be ready to plant. When harvest time comes again, someone who endures will feast. When it is cold, someone who endures will be prepared. When it is hot, someone who endures will know how to endure it. Summer and winter will follow each other. Day and night will keep turning. Noah endured and survived for another 300 years because he built, gathered, and let go when the world he knew was washed away. God said he wouldn't totally wipe out the population of the world again. But God didn't say disasters won't happen again. As a matter of fact, God's people finally escaped Egyptian slavery and then got sent into the wilderness for an entire generation. And God's people got taken off by the Assyrians and later by the Babylonians. God's people were thrown into lions' dens and forced to face gladiators. God's people were burned at the stake for teaching their children the Lord's Prayer. God's people were forced to flee their lands because of the way they worshiped. Missionaries have been kidnapped and slaughtered for their faith. But you shrug your shoulders and say, that's over there. That's in the past. That has nothing to do with me. So, you know no one who has died from cancer. You've never lost someone to drugs. You've never been betrayed. Have you never lost everything there was in your world? I have. Everything got washed away. Some people rage against God for their loss, and some people endure because they place their trust in God. When everything you know washes away, make sure you have built a life based on the instructions God made specifically for you. Fill it with enough to keep you going. When everything you know washes away, let it go. God has a new world prepared for you, a better world. It may not be kinder, warmer, lighter world, but it will be a world that you are prepared to face. Build on God. Gather what will feed you. Let go of what washes away.